Hello everyone. Today we're going to be reviewing how to solve word problems. Now I know that sometimes word problems can be a bit confusing, so hopefully if you follow the method that I have on the board here, it will be much easier for you to solve word problems. Doesn't matter how big the word problem is, doesn't matter what the word problem is asking you to do. If you use this method, you should be able to solve it fairly easily. Let's take a look at the method that we've talked about. Okay? We call it the rip it and then solve it method. Now let's take apart that rip. Okay, the R in rip means to read the whole problem. Now you can't just jump into a story problem and start pulling out numbers and doing your problem. You must read the entire problem so you know what the problem's asking you to do. The I of the rip means to pull out what's important. Now, many times you may highlight or underline that important information if you're allowed to do so. As long as it's not in the math book, you may do any highlighting or underlining of important information that you need. The P is to make a plan about how you are going to solve the problem. Now, when we make a plan, we're thinking about what operation we're going to perform. Are we going to add? Are we going to subtract? Are we going to multiply? Or are we going to divide? Now that's really going to be dependent on what the question is asking you to do. So you have to slow your thinking down and ask yourself, what do I need to do? This part of the rip it solve it method oftentimes is the most difficult. So during this P, I want you to go ahead and slow your thinking down and really make sure that you know what the problem's asking. Okay? And then after you have a plan, you simply solve it. Let's go ahead and I want you to just listen while I do the first one, and you can watch me as I do the first one. Okay? Okay. We're just going to watch today. Now I've written up here a story problem. Okay? We're going to go ahead and do the R first, which is to read it. There were 24 children in math class. 4 students were absent. Each student had 3 math books in their desks. How many math books were in math class? Okay, so I know what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with how many math books. I know that I have a number of students. So I have to find out what's the most important part of this. So I'm going to take my pen and I'm going to underline what's important. Okay, I know 24 children is important. I also know that the fact that 4 children are absent is important. Now it says each student had 3 math books. So each student, 3 math books. Okay? And then the last part, how many math books were in math class? So this is really asking me for the total number of math books. So I know what's important. I have that all underlined. Now I need to make a plan. Okay? When I think about the very last sentence here, how many math books were in math class? I know that it's asking me for a total number of math books. If it's asking me for a total, I'm definitely not going to divide because division means I already have the total. So I'm not going to subtract, so it's either going to be an addition or a multiplication problem. Okay, let's think about this for a minute. If we have a number of students and each student has 3, I can add that number 3 times, or I can multiply that number by 3 because multiplication is simply repeated addition. Let's think about how we're going to do this. Okay, first off, I need to know first there's 24 children, but 4 of them were absent. So I know right away my plan is I have to subtract those 4 students. Sorry about that. I have to subtract those 4 students, which leaves me with 20. So I know I have only 20 students I'm dealing with. Okay, so now I don't need this anymore and I don't need that anymore because I've already used it. If I have 20 students and each student has 3 math books, I can either take 20 times 3 or 20 plus 20 plus 20. And that's the same thing. So really my plan is right here. How many math books in math class? This will give me the total number of math books. So I can either do 20 times 3, which I know is 60, or 20 plus 20 is 40, and another 20 is 60. So I know there are a total of 60 books. Always make sure you're labeling your answer and circling it. Okay? That is how you do a story problem. Okay, now this is one that I'm going to have you practice with me. You don't have to write the entire story problem down, but I do want you to do the planning part with me because that's the trickiest part. Okay, let's take a look at the next problem that we have. Okay, now I want you to go ahead and work with me for just a minute. There are 14 students that were playing kickball. They all got up to kick, and 8 of them struck out. How many children had a hit in kickball? We just got done reading the entire problem. I know I'm dealing with 14 students, and I know that some of them had kicks and some of them didn't. That's what I understood from the reading part. Now I need to pull out what's important. Okay, so we know there's 14 students in all. We know that 8 of them struck out, and we also know how many children had a hit. Okay, so if I pulled out that important information, then I can start moving on to my plan. Now remember, when we're doing a plan, I have to figure out, am I supposed to add, subtract, multiply, or divide? Okay, well, I already have the total number of students. So if I already know the total, I'm not going to add, and I'm not going to multiply. So that knocks it down to either subtraction or division. Okay, so if I already know there's 14 students, let me write this out. I already know there's 14 students. I know that 8 of them struck out. How many were left that actually hit the ball? Well, that's where I'm going to do a subtraction. Because if 8 of them struck out, the other ones must have made a hit. So what is 14 minus 8? 6. So that must mean that 6 students kicked the ball. That's simply solving it. Okay, for practice tonight, I've typed up a story problem for you to put in your notebook. I want you to go ahead and do the problems that I give you in your notebook. And then I want you to write down any questions that you might have about how to solve story problems. This is something that you're going to have to know from here up and through into high school. This rip it, solve it method will help you to understand that better. Have a great